to everybody. Halloween is tomorrow, so for today I thought I'd give you a treat and let you know what my top 13 favourite horror films are. So, the reason it's 13 is no some stupid gimmick event, it's just because I had trouble narrowing it down to 10. It was supposed to be top 10, okay? And I didn't want to cut anybody out. I cut enough out. It originally started at 20 and I dwindled it down to 13. I thought 13 is a spooky-ish number. We'll leave it at 13. We'll leave it there because it was getting quite stressful, surprisingly. What I'm going to do is we'll reveal my we'll reveal my favourite movies, and what we'll do is we'll reveal each movie for each number. So they're in order 13 to 1. So I just need to warn you now, no movie here is better than each. Some of these movies are terrible. I can admit that right now. I've chosen these for movies I can never get sick of watching. I can put them on and no matter what my mood is, I'll have a good time. Only a handful of them could be considered what you'd call scary. So some of these movies are just right terrible, but I love them to bits because I enjoy watching them. There's nothing about them I dislike. I just put them on and I'm having a good time the entire time. So without beating about the bush, so let's get to number 13. So it's Dolly Dearest. Number 13 is Dolly Dearest. Now, what you're thinking, I've never heard of this movie. Or if you had heard of this movie, you're thinking to yourself, that film is terrible. Why is this on your list? The story's between me and Dolly Dearest, so let's play the trailer while I'm talking. So, me and my brother got my parents to rent this for us. We seen it in Global Video. We seen this artwork. It's showing on the screen. It was creepy. We didn't really like dolls too much to begin with, so we watched this film. We thought it was terrifying. So terrifying, in fact, that my brother did not sleep in his own bed for a year after seeing this. He slept on the floor at the foot of my mum and dad's bed for a year after seeing this movie. It terrified him. He's still not keen on porcelain dolls to this day. So, this movie, let's just say it scarred him. It scarred him. And to be fair, I'm not too keen on dolls myself. I always keep my eye on them if I'm in a room with them or myself. I don't trust them. This film, the acting isn't great, but Rip Torn's in it and he's always great fun. But some of the doll special effects are great and some of them are terrible. But if you don't like dolls, I recommend watching this film because it will scare you. And if you're looking to be scared, I'd recommend this if you don't like dolls. Most people would just think it's terrible, or you might have a good laugh watching it like I do. So that's Dolly Davis. So there's nothing really spectacular to talk about in this film without giving it away. The basic gist: family buys a doll factory, they move in, but there's a tomb just down the street that's been unearthed. A demon takes over the dolls in the factory and tries to possess a little girl. That's the basic gist. Enjoy the film from then on. So that was my number 13 spot. That was Dolly Dearest. Let's move on to number 12. So number 12 is The Shining. There's not much I can say about this movie that hasn't been said before. As a young child, I had no idea what this movie was called. I remember we had a blank videotape that had this recorded on it, and I remember it must have started about 20 minutes in, so I never got to see the title. And I remember and it was on the same tape was Flash Gordon, the movie, so I always associated Flash Gordon with The Shining, so they both kind of creeped me out as a child because of that. I remember the children and standing at the end of the hall still creeps me out. If I walk into a hall and someone's just standing at the end of it, I go, oh, even if it's pure innocence, they just happen to stand at the end of the hall, I still get a fright because of this movie. It just takes me back. I love Jack Nicholson in this movie. I love the acting. I love the direction. I love everything about this film. Even though it's nothing like the book, I still think it's brilliant. It's not a movie I put on too often because I don't want to overdo it. I put it on every few years. Watched it last year when I introduced it to my sister, getting ready to watch Doctor Sleep. But she didn't find it too great. She thought it was a bit boring, but I loved it. This is The Shining. So everybody knows about the Here's Johnny scene. It's on the front cover of the Blu-ray and the DVD most likely. Jack Nicholson going crazy is just great to watch. The acting from the child is great. Usually children in horror movies irritate me because they're usually terrible, but the child in this is great. He plays a good part. He's good at playing the boy with the little guy in his head. So if you've not seen The Shining, I recommend it. If you have seen The Shining, watch it again. Why not? Watch it again. So that's my number 12 spot. That is The Shining. So let's find out what's number 11. It's Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. I know what you're thinking, that's another film that's not that great, and I admit that it's not that great, but this was my first Friday the 13th movie that I seen, first one I owned, so it's got a special place in my heart. I think it's got the right amount of kills, it's got the right amount of cheese. Everyone in the film just looks like they're having fun, especially Kane Hodder in his first appearance as Jason. He's just killing it in this film. Pun intended. So as you can see, there is very 80s. It's one of the most 80s looking of the Friday the 13th movies, despite almost all of them being made in the 80s. This one just screams 80s to me for some reason. Every time I watch it, it's like, man, this is mega 80s. Maybe in Part 8 is the most 80s, I'm not sure. But I love Friday the 13th Part 7. I don't get bored of it. There's a few of the Friday the 13th movies I put up with because I usually marathon the full series and I need to get through the ones I don't really like to continue. Part 5, I'm looking at you. So I love Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. One of my favourite ones. Jason's great. It's nice to see him up against someone that can fight back for the first time, but not the last time. So, yeah, this is my number 11 choice, Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. Let's look at number 10. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from Tobe Hooper. I love this film. I love everything about it except Franklin. I absolutely hate you, Franklin. I wish you died earlier in the movie. So, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if you've never seen it or never heard of it, group of kids are going cross country in a little VW camper van looking thing, going to check out their old, I think it's their grandpa's old house. Pick up a hitchhiker on the way. Hitchhiker's a nut job, they get rid of him, but then they go to the house and then they all seem to separate for some reason. And a couple of them end up at the house across the field, and that is where Leatherface lives, and he takes exception to people going in his house, and the massacring begins there. There's not much chainsaw massacring, as the title would suggest. There's not even that much blood in this movie. There's very little blood for a movie that is famous for its gore. There's like practically no gore in this movie. It's most of it's suggested, which I absolutely love. It's all down to realism. Even though he's running about with his face covered in a skin mask, it is all based on the real life killer Ed Gein. Kinda. Roughly. The rough gist of it is based on him. So I just love this film. It's had a remake. I quite liked the remake, if I'm honest. I enjoyed the remake. I've not watched the latest one, which is Leatherface. I should probably get that one done at some point soon. So, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, absolute classic. If you're not a fan of really old movies or old horror movies, check out the remake. But I recommend you check this one out first because it's fantastic. I absolutely love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's another one I don't watch too often because I don't want to overdo it, but I love this movie and it's always going to be one of my favourites. Number 9 is Saw. I don't have Saw singularly on DVDs. I've got this collection here. I've got all the movies, but this is... So Saw 1. I absolutely love Saw 1. I remember when me and my mate Keita first seen the trailer for Saw, we were like, we need to see that film. And we did. We watched that film, and I'm not going to give away any twists and stuff, but the twist ending, if you don't already know it, is one of the best twist endings I've ever seen. And if you tell me you guessed that, you're a liar, and I won't believe you. I won't believe you, but Saw... A lot of people think this started off the whole torture porn style of horror movies with Hostel and things like that. But no, I did go that way roughly with the series getting more and more brutal as it went on. But the first Saw, as it was set mostly in one location, I love movies like that. I love horror movies like that. I like the claustrophobia of it. And I love the hopelessness that being stuck in one location brings. And I think Saw amplifies all that to great extents with ever increasing stakes on the characters in the movie. So I'm trying to. Well, the basic gist of Saw is two people wake up in a room, they're chained to the wall, and there's a little cassette tape that explains various directions on how to escape. But these directions usually involve some sort of sacrifice of pain, and these people have to go through. So there's a very psychological horror film with gore put in. Actually, there's not that much gore in the first Saw movie, and there's also a detective tracking down the person that's put them here. So there's two stories parallel at the same, which is great. Most of it is in the one room. Every now and again, it will cut to the detective. If you haven't seen Saw, or maybe been put off because you think it's gory, check out at least the first one. I recommend the first one. It's not too gory, but the story is fantastic. And if you really liked it, continue the series. I recommend binging 1 to 7 because it's like watching it's like watching a TV show. It's like each movie is basically an episode. It's like one long story that builds up, and you're like, okay, one of the movies, I think it's Saw 5, is the weakest of all of the Saw movies I've seen. I'm not including Jigsaw in that because I see that as a spin off rather than a sequel. Saw 5, you kind of need to just put up with it to get to Saw 6, which gets you to Saw 7, the final chapter. So that's my pick for number 9, Saw. So let's have a look at number 8. So number 8 is It Follows. I was blown away with this movie when I first seen it. It's a movie I've only seen 2 or maybe 3 times total, and it's because I loved it that much. I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to dilute the movie in my mind. I want to keep it fresh whenever I do decide to watch it. So, It Follows, basic gist is, I know you're watching this video, son, so if you've got any questions, ask your mum. So, It Follows is about this spirit or demon that kills people by following them, and once it catches up to them, it kills them. But it only follows people that have had sex. So, for example, if you have sex with someone and the demon's following them, it would no longer go for them, it would be coming for you. So you would have to then go and have sex with someone else to pass it on. But once it's killed that person, it goes back the way to whoever gave it to the person it killed, and they've got to pass it back on. It's got to keep going. So the movie's about this girl who's now got the thing following her, and she has to try and figure out how to stop it or pass it on. She's got to make a decision. This film was highly, highly rated when it first came out, and I don't blame it. It's great. There's the thing that's following, it's not, when I say demon, it takes the shape of a person. It can be any random person, so you could just be looking up the street and it could just be someone walking down the street. It doesn't run at you, it just walks. So if you want to avoid this thing, just jump in your car and drive for a few hours. That'll give you at least that'll give you a bit of a breather. So I don't want to spoil the movie, but watch it because it is creepy. It builds up tension, it gets in the back of your head, and it gets in the back of your head and it stays there. It gets its fingers in there and starts working its magic on your nerves. That's what I say about It Follows. I think it's great. Recommend it if you've not seen it. Well, I'm going to say that about every film on this list, I suppose. I'm just going to keep saying that I recommend it. So, It Follows, if you've not seen it, look it up and get it watched. Make sure the volume's a bit high because the sound in this movie is fantastic because everything builds up tension. Everything. The ending is probably the weakest part of the movie for me. Probably the same for most people, but because the rest of the movie is so damn good, I've put up with it. I put up with it. So that is It Follows. So let's move on to my next movie, which is number 7. The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. I couldn't find my individual Blu-ray or my individual DVD, so I put this box up. So The Thing, I absolutely love this film. I maybe watch it it was yearly at one point as soon as we got to the winter times. It's a great winter movie. So I'll give you the basic gist of the movie so I don't spoil it. Team in Antarctica, they're disturbed by scientists in Antarctic base are secluded. They get disturbed by a helicopter chasing a dog. They're shooting the dog. Helicopter is destroyed, but the dog stays there. So they send someone to the nearest base to find out what the hell was going on. So they get there, the base is destroyed, and they find out there's some sort of alien that can shapeshift to the form of anything it makes contact with. and then and it can keep spreading. So they go back. So the basic movie is you're trying to figure out who has been infected, who is the alien and no longer human, and who has it then infected, because it can be more than one person. So it's a nice like sci-fi mystery movie with lots of great practical effects. I couldn't praise these practical effects enough. I love them. Everything about this movie is great. I recommend it. Kurt Russell is your star. If you like, Kurt Russell's always good in anything, especially when he's with John Carpenter. So I don't want to give anything. I'm trying not to give it away. Once again, highly recommend it. There was a prequel that came out in 2011, which is okay. When I watch the thing, I tend to watch the prequel right after or right before it. It's just like a nice little double bill. Get one longer story. The prequel is obviously about the other base. So yeah, that is my choice for number 7, and that is The Thing. Let's have a look at number 6. Child's Play. The original Child's Play, not the remake, the original. So I don't have the individual DVD or Blu-ray, so I've got my box set here. So let's load up the trailer. So Child's Play, if you've never heard of it, is about the killer doll Chucky. But when the first Child's Play movie came out, it was cleverly made, because all the way through the movie, they kind of hint at the fact that it might not be the doll that's a killer. It might be the child that the doll has become latched with. So I really like that fact, but because I know there's so many killer, before I seen this movie, I knew about the killer doll Chucky. That went over. That didn't really affect me watching the movie, but I love the first Child's Play. This one was trying to be scary. The rest of the movies start getting more comedic as they go on. Then at one point they went really downhill, but now they've started to slowly climb back up for the last 2 movies. But the first Child's Play, basic gist: man is killed. He's a serial killer, puts his soul on a doll. Later on, that doll gets gifted to a young boy by his mum. But suddenly people around this boy start dying, but he's blaming the doll. But is it the doll? I don't know why I'm saying doll weird. Doll? I don't know what's going on with my voice. Anyway, so eventually the doll is revealed to be the killer, and from then it just amps up. The doll is foul-mouthed, swears a lot, everything. This doll just wants to kill everyone. He just wants to do what he wants, and no one's going to stop him. And that's what I love about Chucky. Brad Dourif is fantastic as Chucky. They couldn't get anyone better for Chucky. With the remake, they had Mark Hamill. His voice was pretty good. That was probably the best thing in that remake, but we're talking about the original Chucky here. So, recommend it if you've never seen Chucky. The first movie it's not big on gore. It's not trying to be silly, so recommend it. If you're not a fan of too much gore, first Child's Play, maybe stop as the movies go on, because they do try to up the theatrical. They try to up the kills. I'm going to cut that. So let's have a look at the next one, my number 5 choice. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon is a great mockumentary horror movie. I saw this movie right after it originally came out. So the basic gist of this movie is there's a little documentary crew, and they're following about this person called Leslie Vernon, who is striving to be the next great serial killer. And he is showing them the tricks of the trade, such as how to keep up with someone but make it look like you're walking. How to make sure that no one can escape the house that's easily escapable beforehand. Things like that. So it plays up in all the little tropes in horror movies and amplifies them and makes fun of them. It's mostly in documentary form for the most of the movie, but every now and again it will cut to regular movie style. And then the whole last section of the movie is in movie style. I don't want to give anything away. The person that plays Leslie Vernon is great. It also stars Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger. He is good in it. He plays like the Loomis character type archetype, the psychiatrist come to stop the serial killer type thing. They even bring that up. They make fun of it. So, not many people have heard of this movie because it was a very small indie movie when it first came out. It's probably got a bigger following in America than it does here in the UK, but I think it's on Amazon Prime. So if you've never seen this movie, watch it. Get this movie watched. Everybody needs to see this movie. I would love a sequel to get made one day. There has been like rumors of a sequel for quite a long time. So hopefully we'll get our sequel one day. So that's Behind the Mask with Leslie. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. So let's have a look at number 4. George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead. This classic movie, absolutely love this film. It's my favourite zombie movie of all time. The remake I actually pretty like. I really like the remake, but this movie, you'll never top this for zombie movies for me. Dawn of the Dead, basic story, it starts off that zombies have already kind of risen or already slowly taken over. I'm going to assume it's maybe within the first week or the first month. It's definitely at some point in the first month of zombies slowly taking over America. So a small group of survivors take off in a helicopter and they find an abandoned mall in the middle of nowhere and they decide to make that their new home. So the movie is set in this mall and it explores the loneliness that these characters are going through, as well as trying to keep themselves sane with the outside world going mental and dead. So the zombies slowly start herding towards this mall for no real reason. It's speculated it's just out of instinct. But the zombie special effects are great, other than the makeup for the zombies. They're mostly painted kind of pale blue and green. But at that point, there was no real precedent for how zombies looked until Thriller really came out and kind of made people realise Day of the Dead, they took it to the next level. But Dawn of the Dead, if they had the special effects from Day of the Dead, this movie, it'd be higher on this list, I'm telling you. I highly recommend this movie. It's a little long on the long side for a movie of this decade. So I've got several versions of this movie. There's different versions to buy it. You can get the regular version, director's cut. There's even a cut from a different director. It's mental. I'd like to get this in Blu-ray one day, but right now I've got to deal with all my different DVD editions. But because it's an older movie, it doesn't make a difference. But Dawn of the Dead, get it watched. In fact, watch the entire of the Dead series. Night of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, Survival of the Dead. Get them all watched. George Romero deserves it. My number 3 is Rec or Record, whatever you want to call it. This is a Spanish horror movie, and I would say this is as close as you can get to a perfect horror film. It's utterly brilliant. I saw this movie at the Glasgow Fright Fest. It was the UK premiere of the movie. I had never heard of the movie before. I was there to see another movie, but I'd got the day pass, so I'd seen everything. And after this movie was on, I was blown away, absolutely blown away. My then girlfriend at the time, she enjoyed it as well, so I just left her sitting there. I ran down those steps and I met the two directors and I gave them a hug. I was like, thank you for that. I've still got my signed poster to this day. So the basic premise of this movie is there's a camera crew and a TV reporter woman following about a night shift fire crew to see what they get up to at night and on call. So they go to a basic call at a block of flats for an old woman that's fallen. Turns out she's infected with something. The whole building gets sealed off from the outside and everything's seen from the point of view of the camera for this camera crew. Now, the things I love about this movie is how real all the performances are from. So most of these people weren't actors. The person that got to play the TV personality was an actual TV personality and not an actor. Most of the actors were only given their own lines, so they weren't sure what the other people were going to say, so they tend to talk over each other like real life, which gives it a bit more realism. When things happen, not everyone knows it's going to happen, so when you see their reactions, that's their actual reactions, and it's fantastic. The practical effects look great. I don't want to give it away, but it's kind of like a zombie movie, but it's not quite a zombie movie. infection movie is the best way to describe it. When you watch the sequels, it is explained what's going on, but in this one, it's basically like a zombie movie. So I recommend watching this one if you don't mind subtitles. There is a remake of this that was done in America called Quarantine, which is awful. Don't watch that. Do not watch that. Watch Rec. Watch a subtitled movie, people. It won't kill you. Watch Rec or Record. Whatever you want to call this movie. It is as close to perfect as you can get for a horror film. There's not many horror films that have made me actually get major jump scares in the cinema or made me feel really, really uneasy like this movie. So get it watched. I've spoke too long, so let's move on to number 2. Number 2 is Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead. I love the Evil Dead series. I love Bruce Campbell. So I sat and thought for a long time which Evil Dead movie is going to be my number 2. Because I was just going to make this the trilogy. But I thought, no, I'm going to make it single movies. Otherwise, I'd have just done the Saw collection, Child's Play collection. But no, Evil Dead 1. And I had to sit and think about it. Whenever I usually watch, if I feel like watching Evil Dead, I'll usually shove on Evil Dead 2, as it includes like a mini remake of the first one. But Evil Dead 1 was my first Evil Dead. It was my first experience of that movie. It is more horror than it is horror. The next one's a horror comedy. This one has got some great genuine moments. It's got some fantastic camera work. Basic gist of the movie. Bunch of people go to a cabin in the woods. This is the first movie to really do that, or at least popularise it in my opinion. They go to a cabin in the woods to find an old book, the Book of the Dead, and a tape recorder, and they play the tape recorder which reads out something from the book. It brings out spirits which start possessing and killing people. So those people start becoming demons and start killing their friends. That's the basic gist. I'm not going to spoil it for you. The second movie I personally think is better, but this one's my favourite. Does that make sense? Something could be better, but it's not your favourite one. It just depends on how much you get enjoyment from it. I love The Evil Dead. Saw this in the cinema for the first time last year with my sister, and it was one of the best things. It was a great experience. I loved it. I've got my own Book of the Dead DVD edition. If you've not seen the Evil Dead series, get it watched, because there's a TV series that's a sequel to the movie trilogy called Ash vs. the Evil Dead, which is one of the best TV shows I've ever watched. Highly recommend it. So that's the Evil Dead. Get it watched. It's brutal. It's funny. And it can make you jump at times or flinch. So that's all you really need in a horror movie. That's Evil Dead. So let's see what my number 1 is. And Nightmare on Elm Street is my number 1 favourite horror movie of all time. If you know me personally, this was an easy guess. You'd have guessed this before you even put this video on. I absolutely love A Nightmare on Elm Street. So before we get the video footage up, you can see I've got it in DVD, I've got the VHS, I've got Blu-rays, I've got multiple copies in DVD. But this VHS is the VHS that started all, because look at that cover, that painting. I used to sit as a child staring at that picture when I wasn't allowed to watch this film for ages, because it used to give me and my brother nightmares. So I wasn't allowed to watch, but I'd sit and stare at that cover because I loved it. I loved that artwork. I loved everything. If they've released that artwork on Steelbook, I'd snap it up. So let's get some footage on while I'm talking. So yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, the basic gist is a bunch of children, or not children, teenagers. I'm going to say they're about 17, nearly 18. They're not 17, 18, still teenagers. They're having nightmares about this guy, badly burnt. He's got a striped jumper on, but he's got a glove with knives on it. He's been haunting their dreams, but here's a kicker: if he kills you in your dream, you die in real life. So the main lead, Nancy Thompson, played by Heather Langenkamp, is brilliant. She was one of my childhood crushes. Not my first, but one of them. I'm looking at you, Pink Ranger. Anyway, so this movie is brilliant. It blends the dream world with the real world so well. Sometimes you're like, is she dreaming? Is she not dreaming? Especially, there's a scene where she's running up some stairs in the dream world and her feet sink through the stairs, and it's kind of like mud, and she can barely move. She's struggling to run because of this thick mud, and I've had nightmares like that, so I can relate. So Freddy Krueger is played by Robert Englund, who is absolutely he was born to play Freddy Krueger, who is a child killer, and he is just relishing playing this part and torturing these children, killing, oh, not children, teenagers. The movie keeps referring to them as children, so that's why I'm calling them children, but I've never seen them as children. Even as a child, I'm like, they're too old to be called children. So there is 6 Nightmare on Elm Street movies, with a 7th movie called Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Then there was Freddy vs. Jason, but this is the movie that started it all. There was also a TV show called Freddy's Nightmares, which is terribly great. It's the only way to describe it. I love this movie. I could watch this movie all day. If you sat me in a room with this and Ghostbusters, I'd be happy. Put them on TV. I would keep myself entertained just for watching these. If you really love the Nightmare on Elm Street movie, I'd recommend watching Never Sleep Again. That is a documentary about the entire Elm Street series. It's like ridiculously long, but I recommend watching it. So that is my favourite horror movie of all time. Yes, that was my top 13 favourite horror movies. So as I said, not everyone's going to agree with my list. Some of these movies are objectively terrible. Some are bona fide classics. But if you liked this, I'll do more top 10, top 13 videos on other movie genres, computer game genres, whatnot. You know what I mean? Let me know if you like this. Leave some comments below. So yeah, I enjoyed making this video. It's made me want to watch some of these. So all month I've been watching horror movies I hadn't seen before. But doing this video has made me wish I was watching movies I had seen before. So I kind of want to watch all these movies now. And I just don't have the time. So I hope you enjoyed Spooky October. I thought I'd end the month with a decent horror themed video. Hope you've enjoyed the live streams, and I'll try and get some decent more videos and themes done soon. And as always, don't forget, have a good one.